So Modibodi is an Australian company founded in 2013 by a mother, Christy Chong, who had recently had her second child. And she found that she had some bladder leakage from that and therefore needed to use disposable pads so that, to maintain that bladder weakness and not have leakage. And after using a number of disposable pads, she decided this was a crazy thing and so much waste was being created and that there must be a better alternative. So she came up with the idea of a normal pair of underpants that could absorb fluid and lock it in so that you wouldn't have any leaks. And at the same time, therefore, you're not using single-use disposable hygiene products such as pads. The brand has evolved really to be focused on menstruation, so period care. So when you have your period, traditionally women, and I use that women to include everyone who has a period, would use a pad or a tampon. But now using Modibodi, we have reusable underwear where you can use your underwear. It absorbs the fluid, the blood. When you finish with it, you rinse it out, and then you pop it in the washing machine and put it on the line to dry, just like you do any of your other underwear. And it's through the technology of Clever Fabrics that is what makes this product work. We were probably the first, we say we were the first to market. We were the first to market in Australia and potentially one of the first to market globally. There was another company in Canada that was coming online at the same time. So it's a real disruption to the feminine hygiene space. And in 10 years, there are lots of brands now producing period underwear because it has such a great impact from an environmental perspective and also just from the general level of freedom that young girls and women can have using this type of product rather than traditional disposable. So that's right up my alley, head of sustainability. And what that means to us is really we term it under ESG, so environmental, social and governance, which is a common term used in the industry and in any sector would have an ESG department or a person of some point. So we are a brand that manufactures a product. So for us, that starts with, well, how do we make decisions around what fabrics we're going to use in the product and where those fabrics come from and how have those fabrics been produced? Be that, wool grown on a sheep or cotton from a cotton farm or a synthetic fiber. Is it recyclable? Is it recycled? How are we managing water? How are we managing waste at the end of life of our product? So maybe after 4 years, you've been using the product for a number of years for every period, and then you feel like the pants have sort of reached their day. What's going to happen to it? Does it go to landfill? Can it be broken down? Can it be recycled? And then on the social side, so very much looking at our supply chain, how is it manufactured? Who's manufacturing it? Where are they manufacturing? What are the conditions for those people? Along with what are the environmental impacts that the facility may be having? How do we ship it? What are the emissions created from getting it from the factory to us and getting it from us to the customer? How does the customer wash it? What are the emissions when the customer washes it? So it's the whole gamut of everything that we would call environmental and social, and then all that layer of governance around regulations that we have come over the top of that to make sure businesses do the right things. Us as a business, we have been ahead of the game, so we tend to be ahead of what the compliance or the regulations are saying because we know it's the right thing to do and we think we get a better outcome for ourselves, for our customers and for the product, and that's how we run our business. So it's very much embedded into the DNA of Modibodi. It's a really exciting space. It's changing all the time. There's constantly new things to learn. At the moment, we look at how do you reduce your emissions in your supply chain, which means the factory where it's being produced. That's really tough because we don't own that factory. We have a contract with those people. We've decided to work with people who we know have the same values as us, which is really important. But they work under, potentially a different government rules and regulations. They've got their own business agenda that they're working towards. So it's quite a complex area, sustainability as a whole, but it's a really exciting area and it goes across the whole business. It even goes to the point of when we put a product on the market and, there's a claim that says this product saves 10% of water. in comparison to a disposable product. Now, I'm making that figure up, but when you make a claim like that, you have to be thinking, well, do I have the evidence? Have I tested the product, and do I know that that's accurate to make that claim? So sustainability, is looking at greenwashing. Like, what can you say? So we do a lot of testing to make sure what we do and what we say is accurate, and then we only say what we know. So lots of things around sustainability in Modibodi. Part of an ESG or sustainability lens, thinking about people, having empathy for people, and who are our customers? Our customers are, people that have a period, which is potentially 50% of the global population. So it's very important that we represent all types of people and bodies in our advertising campaigns. Our product is for all bodies and for all lengths. So we make very conscious decisions about making sure that, the types of models that we have in our campaigns, the modeling agencies that we work with, the agencies that have a good representation of, what a population would look like. I think the interesting thing about diversity is we're a global brand, and what is diversity in one location and in one culture is not necessarily the same in another. So what that country would expect to see is a diverse representation of their population of, gender and body sizes, ethnicity, all types of things is different from culture to culture. So that actually can be quite complex for a brand where you can't reproduce everything. So, not every ad and everything you see is going to be representative of every single possible, size, age, ethnicity in every ad. There's a mixture that goes throughout the campaigns, but the brand very much is dedicated to ensuring that it is representing the people who use our product. We're based in Sydney, and we are a small, lean team. We would say that we are in scale-up size. So we were a startup 10 years ago. We'd still say that we're in scale-up size. We have about 35 people who work in the business, and we use a lot of different consultants and experts to help us do various things. But within the business, you would find a sustainability team, finance team, you'd find an operations team, which would be production and logistics, and that means the team that's looking after our facility, so where we manufacture and those relationships with the manufacturers and the quality of our product and all the things to do with that, logistics to get the products to us and to the warehouse, and from the warehouse to our customers, being direct to a person or direct to a shop. We would have a marketing and branding team. So who are we? How do we tell our story in the market? And what does that look like? What does that sound like? What does that feel like? And that also then is different for different campaigns and different styles of products. So we have a product team. They are the ones that come up with the concept of what does the product look like? What's the right fit? What's the right materials? What are we trying to achieve if we're creating a product for, a man who might have some light incontinence compared to we're making a maternity top for a woman who's just had a baby, compared to we're making a pair of period underpants for a 10-year-old who might be looking at her first period, compared to a young girl who's 15 or a young woman who's 25, or a mother who's 35. There's a whole range, so the styles and the aesthetics are going to be different. So that's our product team. We have a customer service team, which is really important, and they're talking to our customers. They're getting feedback. They're managing questions about how does the product work, or maybe it hasn't arrived, or all sorts of questions that we as customers might have. We have an executive director who sits over the top of us. We have a human resource team which actually sits within our parent company, and an IT sort of assistant who sits within our parent company, and that's really great because they're sort of a shared service among a few brands. I hope I haven't missed anybody. The main one is we have a digital team. So we're an online brand, and we sell online predominantly. We also sell in stores, but online is a big market for us. So online being our own websites that you can purchase through, or equally being marketplaces. So we have marketplaces where you can go to, like on Zalando or Amazon, it's someone else's platform that we put our products on to sell. And of course, the sales team. Can't forget the sales team. So the sales team are the ones who work with, supermarkets and pharmacies or distributors or clothing stores to sell the product. I think I've captured everybody. What I can reflect on is what the changes that we've seen in the past 10 years. So we came into the feminine hygiene space as a disruptor. Before, pads and tampons were sold in your local supermarket or your pharmacy. That's where people would go to buy those products. And then you've got these new brands, reusable products, who are now selling online because we have a relationship direct to the consumer and have moved into those traditional bricks and mortar avenues. But the online market has just grown exponentially as a way to reach customers. And then within that marketplaces, so we would say what's relevant particularly to our world, and there's a real disruptor, is how the internet is used and marketplaces are used and online shopping is used to connect with the customer. Now within that you may have very clever technology that we would understand from consultants or from those platforms themselves, those algorithms that they run to. How do you get in front of the customer? How do you use your social media to get in front of a customer? I think the complexity is the refinement and the different ways in which those algorithms work to allow you as a business to put your product in front of a customer who doesn't necessarily know about the product yet. It's very different to traditional selling where if you come into a store, you're there for a reason, you kind of know what you might want, so you've already got that intention to purchase. And I think other changes that we see in the future, again, is sustainability is a huge one. Regulations on sustainability that require businesses to operate in a more positive manner, to be considerate of the environment, of people, and making sure they've got good governance in place to make sure their business is operating ethically, become more and more common. So you need this change in work is understanding that you can't just leave things up to businesses to do what is right, and there's more compliance. So I think there is a real shift then in the types of businesses that are going to be able to operate in the future, and how successful they're going to be, because if you're not keeping up with those regulations, you're just actually not going to be able to be on the market. And I'll give you an example. There's a very big marketplace in Europe called Zalando, and the level of questions that you have to answer and the number of registrations and codes which you have to provide because you've done certain environmental things, which you only get those codes because you've done a certain amount of work with another organization and they have then issued you a code, it is phenomenal of how long it will take you to get in those marketplaces. But I think if you're not able to do that, you're not going to be able to sell there. If you can't sell there, there's a potential huge amount of your customer base that you are just not going to be able to reach very easily. There's quite a few, and it's quite interesting to see the different levels of skills, that young employees come with. The very traditional soft skills are super important. And I come from a different generation, so you do see those changes. Communication is number one. And I mean eye-to-eye communication. Stand up from your desk, walk over to somebody else and be able to talk to them and have a conversation. Pick up the telephone and be able to have a very easy, nice, pointing, conversation that you're trying to get something to happen. You can't rely on communication that's a text and an email all the time and not having this face-to-face collaborate. And therefore that extends into, collaboration and teamwork. How do you have difficult questions? Difficult conversations with people and ask questions and get feedback and move a team forward in a certain direction. So you have to have really good communication skills, very good collaborative skills, and resilience. You're going to get feedback when you're at work that you don't agree with. Maybe you don't understand it. You need to be resilient to learn from people who are experienced and to learn from other, parts of the business who have a different lens or have different expertise. So that is super important. And when I say resilience, is not to be offended, not to be annoyed or upset. I mean, that's part of that learning journey in a business. You don't know what you don't know. We're not all in all meetings or conversations, so you don't know other conversations that have happened, in a team, that therefore now this conversation is happening over here is relevant. So you really got to have that resilience. And with that comes patience. Your time will come. Be patient when you're at work, learn from others, observe how others are doing things, observe the conversations that are going on in other teams. What else? It's really important. Sorry. I would say initiative. Initiative is super important. So I think it's really fantastic to be a person who's got some confidence to ask a question if you don't know how something's working. That is super important. If you don't know, ask. But before you ask, initiative. One thing I think we see a shift over time is if I don't know how something works, I just go and ask someone else to tell me. Particularly in certain areas, there is no rule book. You have to work it out. So you've got to have this solutions-focused thinking first. Think it through. What could logically be happening? What could be a potential answer? Maybe there's 3 directions in which you can go in. But think that through so that when you're going to ask for help, which is something really important to do, don't just muddle through if you can't work it out, but have some good logic that you've actually thought yourself about something before you ask for help. So I think that initiative is super key, not waiting to be told what to do or for it to be delivered to you on a silver platter. Like, you really got to get out there, be resilient, talk to people, use your initiative, but equally be patient. We are having cross-functional team meetings every day. There are a whole lot of people working. We need the product team to be talking to the marketing team because the marketing team are talking to customers and the customer service team is getting feedback about what customers like or don't like, and that needs to be fed back into the product team to make sure we're creating the right product. We need to understand with our team, I didn't mention before, forecasting team, how many products do we need to go to what market for what people of what styles? They need to also be feeding that information into the marketing team, needs to feed back into forecasting. So teams are talking all the time. Sustainability works with every team. Finance works with every team. Everyone's got a budget that they need to run. So again, back to those skills, being open to understanding other people's experience, listening to what they are explaining, and really having that mindset of being curious and learning from others is super important to allow that collaboration in teams to happen, because otherwise you may forget to invite some people to a meeting and they have a really great point of view or a different lens which you just haven't even thought of because it's not your area's expertise. So you need to be working with lots of teams and feel comfortable doing that so that you can bring everybody together. And when you do that quickly, you normally move forward quite fast.
Wonderful.
It's part of the DNA of sustainability because you're constantly putting yourself in the position of the environment or people, people in the supply chain, people who don't have access to, in our case, period products. Like, what could we do for them? People who, we design products for people with all abilities. How would they feel? How are we going to get them involved in the conversation? So being able to put yourself in the shoes of somebody else and see things from their perspective is super important. So I think that plays into teamwork, plays into collaboration, and it plays into also you've got to be self-reflective when you're at work. I've got this great idea and I think, I don't understand, why we're not doing it, but maybe from other people's perspectives, that idea isn't quite right because of a whole lot of things. So I think when you're empathetic and you're understanding that there are other things going on and you're not thinking of things completely from your own perspective, it does allow a really nice culture to grow. And there's this lovely collaboration that happens and you get better results. So I think it's absolutely vital to be thinking about others within your business and being empathetic to your colleagues. Also, people always have stuff going on that you don't know about in their personal lives, and that can impact how, relationships work. And you've got to be empathetic to what's going on in the rest of the world, what's happening for your customers. For fashion and apparel, sustainability is key. So I would say I would be looking at, the UN has a textile sustainability playbook. I'd be looking at Ellen MacArthur Foundation. I would be looking at Textile Exchange. Understand, if you want to work in fashion, understand fabrics. Understand how it works. Where does the wool come from? Where does cotton come from? There's different types of cotton. How do you get a synthetic? What is a synthetic? Understand about that industry. Understand marketplaces. How do we do commerce? How do we sell a product to a customer? What are those ways that we can do that? How are marketplaces evolving? The power of a marketplace. From a marketing and brand, like look at what other brands are doing. Why do you like a certain brand? Why are you engaging with a brand? Why are you not engaging with another brand? You know, understand why you're making certain decisions, why you're purchasing in a certain way. Geopolitical is really important when we look around, look at operations and logistics. You know, at the moment, you've got products that are trying to move across the world and they can't take certain routes because there's piracy concerns in the open waters going up towards the Middle East. You know, understand what's going on in the world, because even though that seems quite far away, it comes back down to your business. So, you know, when you operate a global business and we're in Australia and we're selling something into the UK, the fact that your shipment with your product can't get through a certain way is now going to potentially be delayed by a certain period of time is really important. So then you're starting to think, well, where do we want to manufacture? What sort of contracts do we need to have a shipment? So that, you know, all these things have a flow-on effect right back to, you know, if you're just the person who wants to be the designer, you know, you're part of this ecosystem when you're in a business, and everybody's role can have a flow-on effect. So I'd be curious about what's going on in the world. When the war in Russia started with Ukraine, that had a huge impact on cost of living in the UK. So suddenly sales in the UK changed. So all these things are really important, because if you're in the business and, you know, you're not selling as many products, or you're in the business and there's a huge big fashion trend, Barbie, you know, and you haven't jumped on it. Like, there's just many things. So I think be aware of popular culture, but be aware of the bigger political scale that's going on. Understand marketplaces. Dive into sustainability because it touches every part of the business. Be curious and be open to learning. You know, everything that you read, learning about, you know, operations, learning about, you know, finance. If you work in a global business, they'll be talking about currencies, you know, understanding a little bit about those types of things, or just be aware that those things have an impact. You know, are fantastic things to just be getting your brain thinking about when you go into whatever type of business, and particularly even if you were just in a fashion business. These things all have a big impact on how the business is able to grow and be successful.